They tell us that the British came with a Bible in one hand and a treaty in the other. But in the heart of Anioma, they met something they didn't prepare for. While the Royal Niger Company was busy trying to own the land, a group of young men decided that the land wasn't for sale. Now this is the story of Ekumeku, the ones who gave the British Empire a headache for 31 solid years. In the late 1880s, the world changed in a room in Germany. During the Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885, Europeans sat down and shared Africa like national cake, drawing lines on a map to partition our lands. Suddenly, the Royal Niger Company, RNC, a British trading firm, wasn't just buying goods anymore. They were expanding their domination. They pushed from Lagos towards the western Igbo land, hitting places like the Niger Delta and Asaba. Now, before the conference, they were just traders, but after, the power shifted. They became judge, jury, and executioner. They made the laws, said who you could trade with, and then lived as overlords in villages where they were only welcomed because of the guns that they had in their hands. In towns like Ekumeku, this tension was fueled by Father Carlo Zappa, an Italian priest who acted as a European spy, using the mission to gather intelligence for colonial powers while spreading unproven allegations of human sacrifice to justify their military intervention. Now, the RNC didn't just trade, they spread terror. In 1888, they decimated half of Asaba. The very next year, Obosi was burned to the ground. What was their excuse? They claimed they were stopping human sacrifice. But then the reality on the ground was different. British soldiers were living off the people's livestock, seizing their food and assaulting their women. But why was the British Empire so fixated on the Niger Delta? At that time, the area was called the Oil Rivers Protectorate, and the price? It was palm oil. In the 19th century, palm oil was the lifeblood of the Industrial Revolution. It wasn't just for food, it was a lubricant for heavy machinery, it fueled street lighting, and it was a key ingredient for making soap and candles. To the British, the Niger Delta was an industrial gold mine. They weren't there for friendship, they were there for the resource. The British thought their warrant chiefs and new courts would scare everyone into submission, but they were wrong. The Anioma people of present-day Delta State saw the courts and the forced Christianity, and they resisted. The war broke out in two waves, first from 1883 to 1902, and again from 1904 to 1914. It started with blood, following British attacks on Ndoni in 1870 and on Ado in 1897. To fight back, they formed the Ekumeku, which literally means don't speak about it. Now, this was a secret organization of the brave young men from across Igbo villages and the Niger Delta. They knew they didn't have the heavy cannons of the British, so they used the bush. They used stealth. They used guerrilla tactics that caught the Brits off guard, leading to a series of embarrassing British defeats. In January 1898, the British escalated the conflict when Major Arthur Festing led 250 troops to lay siege to Igbuzo, a key Ekumeku stronghold, for 6 weeks. They even deployed the HMS Flirt, a gunboat, to bombard Asaba and other resistant communities along the Niger River. The real strength of the Ekumeku was unity. Before the war, the Anyota and the Igbuzo clans had been in a bitter dispute for decades. But when they saw the common enemy, they dropped their grievances and formed an alliance. Even Onitsha Edo, modern-day Onitsha, joined the movement. But as the years dragged on, British firearms began to take their toll. In December 1902, the British launched a massive preemptive strike, burning down towns and imprisoning leaders. Many of these chiefs and warriors were thrown into the Asaba jail, a fortified compound that became a grim symbol of colonial control, where they were held indefinitely without trial. The resistance cooled down to regroup, but when they rose again in 1904, the unity had cracked. Instead of fighting as one fist, towns tried to defend themselves individually. By 1911, the British began a final roundup of the leaders. By 1914, the year the protectorates were joined to form Nigeria, the fire was dying out. No one knows exactly how many locals died, but the war was so intense it claimed the life of British commander H.C. Chapman. To make sure the Ekumeku never returned, the British introduced the Collective Punishment Ordinance. Now, this meant if one person in a village was suspected of being Ekumeku, the entire village would be punished. Following the defeat, communities like Igbuzo were compelled to accept and protect Christian missionaries, leading to a wave of forced conversions around the Anioma region. The Ekumeku didn't just fight for their own land, they inspired a continent. Many historians believe that their 31-year struggle served as the blueprint for the Kenya Mau Mau Rebellion of 1952. The story of Ekumeku isn't a story of defeat, it's a story of dignity. It proves our ancestors didn't just take their chains lying down. They fought in the shadows so we could stand in the light. If you believe these are the stories we need to keep alive, like and share this video. There are many more stories in our history that need to be told. Drop a comment below and tell me, which other story do you think is not talked about enough? I'll be reading through to pick our next topic. Follow for more.